where I first began. So Tonglen is a Tibetan meditation tradition. It must have been around for at least 1,000 years. It is a practice of breathing in suffering and breathing out. Meditation is about the heart. Now, it does involve breathing in suffering and breathing out love, but it's in service of two things. One is it's in service of compassion for another or for yourself. And this compassion for another or yourself comes when we are not afraid to bring in the suffering that is happening, and we bring it in, and it begins to break down our fear of the suffering. And one way to imagine this is that you have a heart which is, through the course of life, you have learned to protect in some way. That protection is in the form of a steel case that surrounds the heart. And when you breathe in the suffering, what it does is it comes in and it touches that steel case, and it begins to shatter the case, and it lets it into the heart. And once it's in the heart, it finds a spaciousness that allows it to be transformed in energy into another form of energy, which we call love. The more we stay behind this encasement in our heart, the more we are convinced that we are alone and separate. And when the protection of the heart breaks down or shatters, then we begin to have a more primary experience, the experience of oneness with all that open is. And in opening it does something magical, is that it can take that suffering in and it converts it into love. And that's the practice of Tonglen, is the giving and receiving. Or it starts really off with the receiving and passion is, in its original meaning, was suffering. So, today we talk about passion, and it sounds like the greatest thing that can happen to you since we started slicing bread. But in the original meaning, it is the suffering. So the passion of Christ is called the suffering of Christ. So this compassion means we are with others in their suffering. We can also be with ourselves in our suffering. Our compassion. As you do this, tears may come, sadness may be obvious, sorrow, anger, frustration, oh yes, you may feel those. But once they're brought in close enough, they get changed into something else. And so the act of Tonglen is to receive your suffering, to receive another's suffering, and to let it be transformed. As you breathe in essentially polluted air. And as you breathe out clean air. So the traditional way of saying this is the air is warm, the air is dirty, and it is dark. So you breathe in darkness, dirtiness, and you breathe out love and light and cleanliness. There's a phrase in the Christian tradition also that Jesus is on the cross to take away the sins of the world. Right? You with me? That you've heard that phrase. Jesus died to take away the sins of the world. Now, in a certain sense, the ego is dying in this process. And it does so by taking on the suffering of the world and giving out love. It is the practice of receiving the sins, the missing parts, the parts that didn't work, receiving that which failed, and giving out love. You breathe in the suffering of yourself or others, and you breathe out love. And this transformation happens not because you're able to maintain a separate sense of self that I am doing this heroic act. No, it comes with the dissolution of the sense of separateness. Then you become to merge into this Christ nature which you are. And yes, essentially the ego is crucified in this process, but the Christ emerges after or during this, and you become the being that brings light into the world. And so just like the Buddha said, that the life has dissatisfaction in it. The Buddha said that. Like you can't avoid it. And this is a way to get away from what is occurring to everyone. Not by running from it, but by absorbing it and converting it. The Buddha said life is suffering, but he also said there is a way out. This is a way out. Jesus said, I have overcome the world. I have overcome the world. What would that mean? Obviously, we still have wars and all that sort of stuff, but the heart can bring us back to the truth of who we are, to the depth of who we are. And that is the benefit of this. You know, there's been a spate of suicides in the news lately. The average suicide rate has gone up in almost every state in the last 10 years. Lives of quiet desperation are going on. But you can know that no matter who you're looking at, they could use compassion. They could use your love. A lot more than they could use your righteousness, your knowing, your smarts. And so we're trying to build here the conditions for this to be the way we are. By breathing in suffering. Today's lesson is let's breathe in suffering, let's breathe out love. Last week was don't be so smart, you think you know everything, you don't. You don't even know that you know what you don't know. That's just the way we are. But since we don't know it, we're pretty sure we know what we need to know, but we don't know. But now that we've kind of got that out of the way, maybe we can get to this thing, well, okay, since I don't know what I don't know, how about if I become a kind heart? And maybe in our world, what we need right now is more kind hearts than we need smart people.